And I'll just start this. Are you there? Hey.
I'm over here. I'm down here on the blue track.
Well, I'm not a guitarer. I'm a guitarist.
Well, I'm a drummer, not a drummist.
So it should be
I'm a
rapist.
I'm a producist. Turned Up's back. All right.
Broadcasting from Nashville, Tennessee, offering a glimpse inside the music industry, shedding light on things they don't want you to know, and exposing some of the industry's biggest secrets. You're listening to the Turned Up Podcast, presented by Real Sound Productions. Here are your hosts, Jake Jones and Robert Venable.
All right, she appreciated it. I'm going to learn how to talk. And there goes our clean rating. Yeah, thank you for that.
Okay. Nope, rapper. I get it now. Man, I am so excited to be back in this seat, sitting across the studio from you, my beautiful friend, with your beautiful, colorful Thrive patches on.
Thrive patches on. Yeah, both arms.
You can't see mine. It's on my back right here.
Oh, okay. We'll see it later.
Feeling good, though?
Wait, what? I'm feeling great. Man, I'm excited about season 2. This has been a long time coming, a lot of planning, a lot of thought going into this season, and more thought than we did in season 1, because we winged a little bit of that. Winged it?
Wanged it? That's not it.
We did it with kind of flying by the seat of our pants, but this season we've been thinking all summer about what we're going to do when we jump back in, and we are ready to hit the ground running.
We've got some excellent guests, as well as some resources, because something that we learned was we gear our podcast towards people who just are interested in learning things. But we also have a lot of musicians, a lot of producers, a lot of people in the industry who listen. So on top of just learning all this really interesting stuff, we're going to have some resources and different things as well. To be able to improve your craft, to be better at creating music and all of that kind of thing. So welcome Planet Earth to Turned Up Podcast Season 2.
And any other planets who might be listening to this in the future or in the past if you're traveling from other time zones or time.
Wow. I just had a moment where my brain stopped.
So did I, apparently. Did you hear that?
Rebooted. So sitting here with me in the studio is Mr. Robert Venable.
That's me.
Songwriter, producer, guitarist.
Barely.
Pianist.
Still barely.
Had to say that one really carefully.
Yeah, there's an extra syllable in there.
He's an engineer, producer, the guy, especially drummer, and an amazing drummer. In fact, just today I was tracking guitars on something that he drummed on, and it's amazing.
Thank you.
And he also plays drums in a band that I also happen to be in called As We Ascend.
The greatest band in the world.
Robert has credits literally falling out of his nose. I can see them right now. You're going to want to wipe your microphone off.
I have a little bit of a cold. That's what
he drops Grammys and Dove Awards out of his nose and gold records and platinum plaques.
That's where they went.
For real, though, this guy, if you've never looked him up before, you're going to want to. You'll find his Wikipedia page. But
don't image search me. We all have a past.
Some things in college they'll just follow you for the rest of your life. No, the guy is absolutely incredible at what he does, insanely knowledgeable, and really handles the weight of the research for the podcast that we do. And a lot of these ideas are his because he is just so freaking smart. But I'm honored to call him my friend, and I'm honored to have him on the podcast with me and as a co-host of mine.
Thanks, man. I love being here.
So something really cool, Robert, that you started doing over the break this summer was buying squishies, and you started a YouTube channel where you cut the squishies up to see what's inside. And it's something that my daughters have been really loving lately, and they've actually been inspired. They've started cutting up all of our pillows, our comforters. They started cutting the hair off the dogs to see what was underneath it. You owe me a lot of money, but aside from that, how's that been going?
It's been great. I'm sorry that your children are doing the very amateur job of cutting up things around the house. You really need to find quality brands of squishies in order to cut them up to make quality smaller editions of the same squishies. Some of my favorites are the Yummy Bear Charms with the Yummy Bear purchase that you get every time you buy a full-size Yummy Bear squishy. Also, you can get a humongous super jumbo candy bear donut squishy, scented or unscented. They come in the 50 centimeter size. Okay. You can find them all over the place. The Mini Puny Mario licensed mochi seal or the lion squishy. Either one, both my favorite. The lemur or the leopard mochi squishy. Both good. Close second, I guess.
What's their squish rating? How quickly do they come back?
That's the thing. There's a scale that I've developed called the RVS scale, which is the Robert Venable Squishy scale. And that is how fast it takes them to come from approximately, if you squish them down to 10 centimeters, if they start at the 50 centimeters, how long it takes to come back up. And you measure that in microseconds.
Okay.
And obviously, the bigger the result of that, it does the slower rising. And that's one of the things. You also want to look for defaults or any kind of defects or anything in the actual foam or artificial material that it's made of.
Okay.
There's a whole bunch I can get into, and let's just dive right in. So I was looking
that's very interesting. You can look him up at RVS
Squishy scale and other things that have to do with squishies.com, org, net, and us.co.
And that's YouTube/.
I forgot that there's just a link right there on the website if you go to it.
Okay, great.
It'll take you right there.
Yeah, you're going to want to check that out. You've been doing really well with that.
Jake Jones sitting right before me and sometimes after me is Jake Jones. And dude, you're one of my best friends, man. Honestly, I'm not even going to talk about. Yeah, I will. Let's talk about it. So if this is your first podcast episode of Turned Up that you're listening to, every episode, we like to make sure we establish some kind of credibility. So we met several years ago, and it seems like an eternity ago because we just hit it off. Our personalities match, and we both do a lot of the same things. We play in the same band. You sing and play guitar while I have to look at the backside while I'm playing the drums.
And you love it.
Sometimes, most of the time. You get sweaty when you play.
Butt sweat.
I make shapes out of the sweat on your back. I'm like, hey, it was like an angel. But you also produce and you songwrite. We have a deal with the same publishing company, Shoalsville Music. Shout out to Chad Green, the owner of Shoalsville. And if you want to be a songwriter, look them up. Also producing and engineering and mixing. And it's funny because Jake and I work on a lot of the same songs, same bands, and sometimes we're working in the same industry but different bands. We bounce ideas off each other, and I learn things from him. He learns things from me. Or at least I like to pretend that is the case. But we talk about plugins and all sorts of nerdy things. But dude, your studio is ridiculous, and number one Billboard charting song that you co-wrote and co-produced and mixed and everything. Looking at the trophy or the statue, whatever you want to call that, the thing
for best new artist and best rock song.
Yeah,
which is a shared award with you, my friend.
Yeah, dude. And then co-hosting this Turned Up podcast. But the thing that I have not mentioned until this day, all of season 1 passed 30 something episodes that we did, and I didn't bring this up, and I'm hesitant to, but I didn't know if you'd be embarrassed or proud of it. But man, for the last 8 years, you have been submitting to the company that makes conversation hearts, little ideas on what they should put on their hearts. They haven't accepted any of them yet, but you're getting a lot of that, hey, we'll bring this up in our next board meeting. How do you come up with those little sayings to put on the hearts that you're submitting to them for approval that they haven't yet approved? But they might.
Too often, Valentine's Day comes around, I buy a box of those little hearts with the words on them, and I read them, and I think nobody would ever actually say that. People don't say that kind of stuff.
That's true.
And as the years go by, I can tell that they're trying to follow pop culture, and so you might see little phrases that you could hear in like a rap song.
Fax me.
Right. Right. That was one. That was one that they used to have. So I've been trying to incorporate real life things like rub my feet.
Yeah.
Or
could you get that for me?
Yes. Or smell my finger.
My favorite that you did was, did we pay the electric bill?
Yes.
I'm like, that's great.
And it's real. We need to bring a sense of realism and groundedness back to our culture and our society. You know, being in a relationship isn't always, hey, fax me. What's your IM?
What was the ICQ number? Do you remember that little messaging thing called ICQ? Like, it's supposed to be I seek you, but it's letters ICQ. And you had this number that was like 10 digits long. What's your ICQ number instead of AIM or whatever? I don't know.
That might have been a couple hundred years before me. You have to remember you're significantly older than I am.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there's a little bit of a gap there.
A lot of bit of a gap.
Centuries aren't gaps, but you know, whatever.
I just remember ASL. It'd be like the first, you'd find somebody on there and you just write ASL.
You'd break the ice with ASL. And as soon as they write back with anything /M, you're like, or like,
right.
If you're a dude, nope, I'm good. Thanks. See you later.
So it's explain for the youngsters what ASL was.
Age, sex, location. You would literally go into a chat room or one of those apps, or they weren't even apps.
There was no such thing as an app.
One of those programs on your computer, and log into a chat room, and you'd put ASL, and people would reply back with their age, their sex, male or female, which these days I guess there'd be a lot more options, and then location, like where you live. So I'd be like, I don't know, I guess I was 15. I don't know, 15/M/AR for Arkansas, where I lived at the time. And then you see this room full of all these dudes, and you're like, okay, bye, see you later. Man, I mean, that's the way you met people, and you never really meet them in real life. Maybe you did, but yeah, and that's how you made online friends at the time.
Oh, the life before social media. I mean, that was our social media.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
You kind of develop a relationship, not like a loving relationship, but a relationship, a friendship with these people. And you're like, wow, I feel like I know these people. And then that show Catfish came out, and you're like, you never know who you're talking to. So your friend that you kept in touch with for years, he's been doing time in the state pen. Okay, so right out of the gate, season 2, episode 1. Let's talk about something that some people deem controversial in the industry.
Can you tell what I'm saying?
This is the Turned Up Podcast. This is the Turned Up Podcast. This is the Turned Up Podcast. Podcast.
All right, you ready? This is what that actually sounded like. Can you tell what I'm saying?
This is the Turned Up Podcast. This is the Turned Up Podcast. This is the Turned Up Podcast. Podcast. So, I guess you know by now what we're talking about. It's Autotune.
Autotune. So it's affectionately known as Autotune.
Almost as common as just saying Kleenex, even though it's a brand or like a name of a thing. It's that household of a name now because of T-Pain and Cher, I think.
Yeah. And by Autotune, as we talk about this, we're not necessarily just talking about automatic tuning.
And in fact, in most cases, and what you and I do, Jake, it's not automatic.
There's nothing automatic about it.
It's all graphically hand-drawn in, painstakingly midied in with keyboards and, adjusting the nuances, how fast it tunes and what note it goes to and how fast it goes to the note or how long it stays on that note or how much of the original ambiance you bring in. It's so many factors that go into it. It's not literally just a plug-in you put on it and say, see you later.
And depending on the genre, can be more desirable, as in, I can't hear that auto-tune, turn it up. Or less desirable, oh, I can tell that's auto-tune, can you turn that down?
Man, and that's a thing. That is a real thing that a lot of times the labels don't want the artist to know that they're going to be, like, they're going to come in, they're going to say, you're not tuning this right. You just say no. When they leave, you tune it and send us the files. And that happens. I've had to tell artists they're not going to be tuned, and then I have to tune them. And I can think of, and we've talked about this before, probably 90 to 95% of the people that I track, I'm tuning on some level, whether it be a lot of tuning, writing in their exact melodies, which you and I know we've done before together.
Oh yeah.
On a project and on multiple projects. And then there are the times that that sounds perfect. Most people would love this, but I know we're going to put a synth or a piano on it that's perfectly in tune and you will sound a little flat or sharp. Side note, did you know that most men sing flat if they're off key and most women will sing sharp?
I didn't know that, but that makes sense. And I know that I sing flat.
Yeah, I do too. I'm usually a little under the note. They say to fix that, you're supposed to flex your butt cheeks and raise your eyebrows. That's what all the choir teachers and vocal coaches I've met over the years have given their students as a way to fix that.
Well, fun fact, you engineered the vocals on the As We Ascend record.
Yeah.
And so that was something that you told me in the studio was, that was flat, let's do it again. That was flat, let's do it again. You know what? Raise your eyebrows, squeeze your butt cheeks, try it again. And to this day, even on stage, if anyone ever comes and sees As We Ascend live, just know that most of that entire set, my butt cheeks could bounce a quarter. And
now you know what I'm seeing from my point of view.
And my eyebrows are not high because I'm surprised. They're raised because I'm trying to hit pitch.
I just thought you go get Botox before every show. I can't move my eyebrows.
You're spilling all my secrets.
Sorry, man. Hey, I don't know where you were in 1998, or if you even were in 1998, but this song right here that we can only play a small part of because we don't want to get sued, is one of those songs that I guess the song, the first published on a national chart song that used Autotune very blatantly. Check it out.
No matter how hard I try, you keep pushing me aside and I can't break through. There's no talking to you. It's so sad that you're leaving. It takes time to believe it.
That was Believe by Cher.
So you're saying Autotune, that was the first
That was the first like nationally
commercial.
released charting song that blatantly used Autotune
as like a part of the sound.
Yeah, as almost like a vocoder.
But it's not the first time that tuning vocals was ever used, right?
Absolutely not. And some people are debating on whether it was the 40s/50s when it came around. It might have been the 20s.
You're kidding.
But most of the research I found says that it started in the 40s and was made popular in the 50s by speeding up and slowing down the tape on bad notes.
Really?
So they would play it back and then splice it in. So recording the tape, literally looks like Scotch tape, like a little thicker, and it's dark brown instead of clear. But it wraps around one reel like a cassette tape. If you remember those, if you're too young, then Google it.
Just a lot bigger.
It's a lot bigger. And they would have to cut it out with a razor blade and tape it in on the back of the tape on the part that they're fixing. So they'd slow it down, which would make the tape go slower, or your voice go lower, or it'd speed it up and start talking a lot higher. So if the note that they were singing was a little off, they'd speed it up or slow it down and cut out that reprinted area and tape it into the tape.
So I can only imagine it took some serious skill to pull that off.
Absolutely. And actually they started hiring people and created a job for just vocal production specialists.
Wow.
For tuning vocals and for comping vocals from tape. And even though like they're the most experienced in their field in the world doing this, it still sucked.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean,
and a lot of people were saying it was worse than the original. But I mean, I don't know. You have a vocalist who's upset about the way they sang it. Like, fix that. Okay, we can fix it. But most of the time, I mean, they called them back in and said, hey, let's just re-sing this.
so that's the 40s. If I had to guess, my best guess would have been that, that sort of thing started popping up in the 80s, just because I know that was kind of when digital synthesizers started getting really popular.
They did. The samplers and things took over. But before that, in between, in the 70s, Eventide, a company that makes a lot of pro audio gear, some of my favorite pro audio gear, the H3000, which is an ultra harmonizer. Think Scott Stapp on Creed's first record. That's like that chorusy sound. That's what he used. And in the late 70s, they came up with the 1745M, which is a digital delay module, and the H949, which is a digital harmonizer, kind of like the H3000 we were talking about a second ago. And basically, it has a little button in there. You can just semi-tune, pitch it up or down a little bit. But a lot like the tape thing, you'd play it back and you have to manually bypass or unbypass that one part, that one word, the one syllable, up or down in real time, and you print it back to the tape.
It was like playing an instrument. You had to practice it till you knew exactly where and when and how.
You're like, coming up, here's the third word. He's going to, do you believe in love? As soon as he hits love, he's a little flat, so we're going to go up 3. You hit it, like, is that where it needs to be? Oh, maybe it's 4 semitones up. Let's try again. Like, changing it completely. And you just punch it back in. And that's how they tuned vocals painstakingly, monotonously, and still not perfectly.
So I imagine the level of skill a singer had to have leading up to this point, and even still then, had to be pretty high, because I can't imagine any engineer wanting to, every single record they do, spend hours and hours and hours and hours, or even days trying to tune vocals on something.
I wonder if the engineer's working with producer. Engineer's the person who's pushing the buttons and miking up the voices and doing all the technical stuff. The producer's the artsy guy with the ideas, kind of the puppeteer saying, you need to do this, you need to do this. So I wonder if the engineer working under a producer and the producer's saying, oh man, you can fix that, right? And the engineer's sweating going, yeah, I guess I have nothing to do next month.
For this one song.
Producer's like, all right, see ya, I gotta go hit the casino. But you're right. You said the 80s. And that's when like digital samplers became a thing. And workstations and keyboards, they had those mod wheels. You know, when you play a piano chord and you hit that wheel, it goes... But they started importing the sounds from the voices and applying those to different keys, or assigning those to different keys. And so instead of saying me, then go me and find where it needs to bend and just hold the mod wheel that way and plug that in, punch that back in.
Literally playing vocals back like an instrument on a keyboard.
Exactly
mod
right.
wheel. Wow.
Yeah. And that was how they tuned vocals.
So there's the 80s. Now 90s introduced something unique, and at the time maybe even a little hated and shied away from, but today is almost exclusively how we record music, and that is computers and software.
Right.
So that was a huge shift in the paradigm for recording, but also editing and fixing things like the tune of a vocal. And of course, it was the 90s that brought about the Antares. I'm saying that right?
Yeah, Antares. Yeah.
I've heard it pronounced so many weird ways. The Antares software, which Antares has the trademark on the name.
They own Autotune.
Autotune.
Yeah.
And so thus is born the term, like Google.
And like Kleenex, it's not nasal tissue. It's, we say Kleenex, or some people say Crayolas, which is weird. I've always called them crayons or crowns.
Crowns.
My kids will get on to me for saying it that way, but
so Autotune became a term. It became a verb instead of a noun. Hey, can you auto-tune that?
Right. And I still say it. Like, hey, we tune this. I even say auto-tune, even though I know it's not going to be auto-tuned. It's going to be manually tuned. But
so, real quick, what's the difference in auto-tuning something and just tuning something?
Okay. So auto-tuning, there are plugins, little things within, okay, back up. I'm recording into Pro Tools. You record into Cubase. There are several digital audio workstations, DAWs, that people use, software programs that people record stuff into. Tons of them. GarageBand comes on your Mac if you get it. You can get it on the app on your phone.
Yeah, there's Ableton and
Reaper is a free one you can find. Digital Performer,
lots of good stuff.
Tons of them. So you record into that. You have your vocals stored in ones and zeros on your computer or hard drive, in whatever software you used. Now, in that software, there are plugins, little add-ons, little additions, little apps you can use to do things, the delays and echoes and reverbs and tuners like Antares Autotune. So when you put that on, you can either put it on, set the key, like this is in the key of C major. We'll just put it on there and let it go. It uses the default settings and will make sure all the notes that are sung on that track stay in the C major scale. So if you sing something that's way off, it's going to correct it to the closest one, up or down, north or south, flat or sharp, whatever one's closest, and just put it right in that scale. Manually doing it, you switch over to graphical mode, which a lot of tuning softwares have. Most of them do. You can see the waveform. You can see where it sits on the graph. Just imagine a graph and all the different lines that go horizontally, just, I guess, going like rows, like an Excel spreadsheet. It starts at C, then goes to C sharp, then D sharp, then E, then F sharp.
Yeah, like the notes on a piano.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like a piano. And you can see the little line where they sang, like a little waveform going on those lines. And if it's just below the lines, a little flat, and you can click and drag it up. Or if it's a little sharp, you can click and drag it down, or you can create complete new vocal melodies. You can also do it, with the keyboard, with the MIDI keyboard, which sends signals to your computer to tell you, like, hey, that note is flat. I'm going to play the C. It's supposed to be a C, but he's saying a D, so he's singing sharp. I'm going to bring it a little flat by holding down the C. So you can kind of play the piano part, and the voice will match up with what you're playing, which is kind of cool.
All kinds of cool things, and
but you have more control over it.
More control, and it's depending on the genre and your use of the tuning software. You may or may not want it to be absolutely perfect, or the occasional just slightly out of tune. Give it some life and some, and so a lot of tuning. So, I would say almost all tuning software, unless it's intended to sound like an auto tune, just robot.
Let's just show them. What if I sang a note like this? If I do the up, and we put auto tune on the automatic setting in the key of pick a key and C major, and we play that back through that. It sounds like this. Up.
Like a robot.
But you can slow it down so it doesn't do that. It won't work with that same thing I just sang. But if I sang, Mary had a little lamb, you can kind of adjust that a little bit.
And fix it.
And sound a little bit more natural like this. Mary had a little lamb.
So those are applications of Autotune, or just tuning.
Yeah. Hey, we should probably talk about the history of Antares, like how it became to be, because I thought it was cool. I don't know, we read about this previously, and the history of Autotune is really cool to me. So we should just do a little quick backstory of it.
Yeah, let's dive into the history of the quintessential originator of what we would call the modern day Autotune.
The godfather of T-Pain.
So it's Antares.
Yeah, that's the company. So let's go back to the 70s. Back when they were still doing, a little bit of tape splicing, a little bit of ultra harmonizing with the Eventide stuff. This guy, Andy Hildebrand.
Hildebrand.
From 1976 until 1989, he was a research scientist in the geophysical industry, which he was working for Exxon. And he co-founded Landmark Graphics at the same time that he was working with Exxon to create the world's first standalone seismic data interpretation workstation.
Oh, yeah, of course. I was wondering this morning when I woke up who created that.
Who was the guy who did that? Yeah, so Hildebrand actually specialized in a field called seismic data exploration, and he worked in signal processing. Think of earthquakes and the way those little seismographs look, making little waveforms. He used audio to map below the Earth's surface. So in layman's terms, basically sound waves were used to find oil below the surface of the Earth.
Okay, that makes sense. So he actually left Landmark in 1989 and started studying music and music composition at the Shepherd School of Music at Rice University.
So wait, this guy's like already doing good things with Exxon, probably making bank, finding oil under the surface of the Earth with his technology he developed. He's like, you know what? Go study music. I'm going to go to Rice University and just start learning how to write music.
Right?
So weird.
So Hildebrand was an inventor, was he not?
Oh, yeah, totally.
So he set out to improve the process of digital sampling in music. And because at the time, it was, what we were dealing with, like bits and bytes and
oh, yeah.
Bits, just bits.
Very, very, very small portions of ones and zeros.
Everybody's heard the old Nintendo sounds. Digital sound sampling was really, really in its infancy. And this guy, being the inventor and the brainiac that he was, wanted to help it out. So he used something that at the time was cutting edge, something that we use every day to day, digital signal processing or DSP technology that he brought over from his geophysical industry, and he invented a new looping technique for digital samples.
That's cool.
He formed Jupiter Systems in 1990 to market his first software product called Infinity.
I remember Jupiter Systems.
Yeah, it was later renamed to Antares Audio Technology.
A new star is born. Yeah.
Yeah, and looping samples is something that we talked about before. And was really, really big in forming rap and hip hop and the beats that they used, but of course is not limited to that, of course. And that's what they used to get the famous 6-second amen break.
Oh yeah,
from the Winstons that's in everything today.
We talked about that before. So Hildebrand then developed and introduced MDT, which stands for Multiband Dynamics Tool. It's one of the first successful Pro Tools plugins. That's what I use. Basically, it's like a multiband compressor in plugin form. And this was followed by JVP. He likes just abbreviating everything. Jupiter Voice Processor. SST, which is a spectral shaping tool. And the 1997 special Autotune. Man, so that's like how we got Autotune. That's where it came from. This guy.
Wow. So it went from software technology invented to find oil to fixing voices in the studio. So
that you could say he struck gold with that. Thank you. I'll be here all day. I'm going to leave.
So I have this guy to thank for allowing me to be one of the 2 lead singers of our band.
Whatever, dude.
So, of course, today we use tuning in just about everything that we do. Future music editor Daniel Griffiths has a ballpark estimated that as early as 2010, pitch correction was used in about 99% of recorded music.
I would agree with that.
In 2007, it was 66%. So that's a really fast
So it caught on.
progression.
And that was a lot of, what was that? So it's between 2007 and 2010, was that the T-Pain era? Is that when all of that started hitting? I think so.
yeah. That about 2007, T-Pain started blowing up.
Yeah, buy me a drink.
Frank.
So you can also find this technology, Ontary's specific coding and technology in guitars that tune themselves, like the PVA, what's it called, the AT200?
Really?
And I know like Gibson makes a Gibson robot, or used to. I had one once. And you strum the guitar and the tuners move themselves and tune your guitar, all 6 strings.
That is nuts.
Isn't that weird?
I remember that. I remember your guitar.
Yeah.
That did that. And it's
Heavy. I didn't like it.
It's really cool technology. So, of course, there's Autotune the News, which I think 2008, 2009 was the big, we have them to thank for Antoine Dodson.
Oh, yeah. What's that? That's a Netflix series, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. The whole intro sequence to that show.
That's right,
is
Autotune News, yeah.
Put a beat behind him. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. So something that was definitely news to me when I started touring and getting around bigger artists was how they use tuning live.
So you know that, Owl City.
Right.
And Adam, one of the singers, or the singer, I guess the main singer of Owl City, he's got this sound on his albums. It's blatantly auto-tuned. It kind of flips notes really rapidly. But what's he going to do when he plays a live show? They put auto-tune on his voice live. But he kind of took a little flack, and people are saying, obviously, you have to be faking it because you can't sing like that normally. So you're probably lip syncing, which is a common thing to do when you're an entertainer in the music industry. Notice I didn't say singer in the music industry. But he does, they use a MIDI setup, like I was talking about earlier. Like you can program the software to go ahead and be ready for that note when it happens. Like you can do it in time. So like in 3 minutes into the song, it goes to a C. And in 3 minutes and 1 second, it goes up to this note. And like it's all programmed as long as you're playing to a click and singing right on the beat with the tracks. It's all programmed on where it's going to go to. So he uses a MIDI setup to snap his voice to the correct notes according to a predefined path that expects the correct dips and curves of the song. So you're like, hey, we're going to play, Fireflies? What was that song? 10,000 Fireflies, something like that, whatever that song was. And it starts in 3, 2, 1, and it starts playing the song. As long as he sings with the click and with the beat, this program is all ready for his notes to hit the certain spots.
So that process is laid out by a ton of rehearsal, and it's done by hand, but it allows him to literally never miss a note when he sings live. Of course, as with any sort of technology, God bless it, there will be glitches from time to time, and you can actually hear them in some of these bootleg recordings.
Maybe he got off beat, or maybe it just software glitch, and all of a sudden he's singing the wrong notes. That's cool. I'd like to hear that. I have to find that.
So Autotune has obviously caught a lot of flack. There's this argument that having to use it means you don't have enough talent to sing on key, so you have to do this. Now, I would argue as a producer that, it's our job, Robert, yours and mine, to listen to trends in what is being successful in the music industry, and we owe it to the artists that we work with to provide them with something that is of equal or better value, so that they can compete.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes, whether they like it or not, if an artist comes in and says, my goal is to top this particular chart, and you look at that chart, and every single artist on that chart has their vocals are tuned.
Meticulously tuned.
Then you're telling them, sorry, buddy.
If you know how to adjust thresholds and adjust the speed in which it tunes, and you make it sound like a person sings, not flatlining everything so every note is really, really, really straight. There's natural warbles in a voice. A lot of artists won't tell.
Well, and what's weird is that tuned sound is part of an expected timbre within a huge chunk of modern music.
Oh, yeah. So right before we started this podcast, we were playing some of the T-Pain stuff that was blatantly tuned. And he took a lot of flack because everybody was like, oh, hey, you're just covering up your poor recording voice.
Oh, I was one of those people.
Yeah, everybody's like, well, he can't sing, so, I mean, that's why he's got the Autotune. And whoever did that, like, we knew as engineers and producers that someone did not tune that properly. But that was because they did it on purpose. Because you can go on YouTube and find like videos of T-Pain singing those songs with a great voice. Like, he can sing.
The guy has pipes.
Yeah.
I encourage you, if you're listening right now, when you park your car or when you're not at work and not going to get in trouble, just look up T-Pain. It doesn't. It sounds like he sounds like a gospel singer.
Right. It does. It sounds like church to me. It's great.
The guy has an amazing voice, and I was very pleasantly surprised to hear that.
But he took a lot of negativity and a lot of non-positive comments from the industry about that, and so much so, like, the other artists started coming out saying, we are a band that proudly does not use Autotune. I don't know if they know it or not, but maybe they were. Like, for instance, okay, the 51st Grammy Awards, that was in 2009, I think like January or February. The band Death Cab for Cutie made an appearance wearing blue ribbons, which was showing their protests of the use of Autotune in the music industry.
Really?
Yep.
I didn't know that. My former band, it was a band called We As Human. We had the great honor of working with Howard Benson. He's a producer, and he's done anybody from POD, Three Doors Down,
everybody.
3 Days Grace, Hoobastank. He's done a lot of amazing records and really blew up for rock. He helped kind of found the modern rock sound that we know today.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And a lot of it, and this comes from working with him and hearing him talk, he pushed rock and pop together. He said, listen, this is what the pop guys are doing. Even though you're a rock band, this is what we're going to do because it's what pop is doing. And you saw rock and roll explode on top 40 radio, and a lot of those were his albums that he worked on. But Howard Benson embraced Autotune or tuning vocals very early on. And in fact, he embraced technology. What's really fun fact, if you know the name Howard Benson, he started off working in aerospace sciences. And
wow.
The guy is a genius. And he was a keyboardist on the side. And I think he was down in SoCal working, doing his aerospace stuff. And he was traveling up to LA every weekend to play keys in a band.
So weird.
And it was through that he knew the music world and was a musician and started doing demos for some artists, and his demos found their way into the right hands. But when Pro Tools came around, he was like, absolutely, computer-based recording. He was very good with computers already.
Oh, yeah.
I'll do it. And there were a lot of bands like Foo Fighters who were like, we will never work with a computer.
Well, I mean, that's Dave Grohl coming from Nirvana, the very grunge antithesis of whatever's popular and modern and polished. They wanted it to be pure rock, you know, raw.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, but that was part of what helped shape Howard Benson's sound that became so popular was that it was that use of computers and the use of tuning, like heavily tuning vocals, especially, in rock. Rock's a little bit of a unique sort of genre where artists are more about, they're more about their message than they are about whether they can, sing great or not.
Right.
And so Howard Benson said, I want these rock bands to compete with the Britney Spears and NSYNCs of the day.
And rock bands started hitting the charts.
And they did. You started seeing bands like 3 Days Grace and Hoobastank up there, top 40 with all the pop artists. And a lot of that had to do with being willing to go in and tune vocals and use digital technology. And so, rock is supposed to be I think at its core, supposed to be the antithesis of conforming and doing that sort of thing. And I think what Howard did was equal parts genius and equal parts the death of a lot of good things about rock by introducing these rock bands into the pop world.
Do you remember switching genres? Jay-Z coming with that album DOA,
Oh yeah,
death of Autotune.
absolutely.
And he had that song, The Blueprint 3, and he said that he wrote the song under the personal belief that way, way, way too many people had already jumped on the Autotune bandwagon and that the trend became a gimmick. So he wrote that whole song, even the record was named Death of Autotune. So he was definitely anti-Autotune. I think he's changed his ways a little bit, especially, being married to Beyonce, which I know a lot of that stuff is heavily tuned. She can sing. She's great. But the genre you're doing, you got to tune vocals. But I mean, Christina Aguilera, pop singer, Genie in a Bottle, all that stuff, appeared publicly in LA back in August of 2009 wearing a t-shirt that said something very obscene about Autotune. And when later interviewed by SiriusXM Radio, she actually kind of reneged on that and said Autotune wasn't bad if used in a creative way. And in fact, my song Elastic Love from the album Bionic uses it. So, maybe it's not that bad. I just wanted to make publicity press stuff happen.
Well, to come full circle, Autotune went from a tool used to correct mistakes for vocalists. It went from being a useful tool like a wrench or a screwdriver to help get a job done to here we are in the last half of the 2000s. It really became an instrument in and of itself. And I think that, even talking about T-Pain, proving, no, I can sing. I'm using Autotune to craft a unique sound that at the time nobody else was really doing. In fact, I think T-Pain, for a little bit there, his name became synonymous with Autotune. It was, hey, can you T-Pain my vocals?
Right, yeah.
Which meant auto-tune my vocals so much that I sound like a robot.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily a thing for people who couldn't sing. It was a sound, like a guitar or drums. It was
an instrument.
It was an instrument.
Oh, so, okay, you were talking earlier about we were using Autotune, the ways we use it now. And we talked about Owl City. I told you a little bit about that and how Adam uses it live, and we discussed that. But you know that on TV, reality shows, one in particular took a little bit of negative feedback on using Autotune on the show.
I heard about this, and if there's any place that I would say it is not okay to tune vocals live, it's in a competition reality show.
A singing reality show. In 2010, the British TV reality series, The X Factor, we all know that one.
It's before it came to the States, right?
Yeah, Simon Cowell, before he became an Idol judge, was over there on X Factor, being the judge over there. He's a huge producer overseas, and so he had the show. One of the show's bosses, they admitted to using Autotune to improve the voice of the contestants, and he actually was like, you know what, we need to ban this. No more Autotune for future episodes.
Which is great. It's a competition.
I know. I mean, I understand the listeners at home want to hear the best singers that are being brought to the table competing, but if they're like, oh man, I can sing better than that guy. I mean, maybe they should have left it untuned the whole time so they would apply or stand in line for 8 hours one day auditioning to be on the show.
Right.
I don't know, but apparently, you and I, Jake, know that maybe it might be used in other TV shows, but we can't talk about certain things anymore, apparently.
So 2010 was definitely somewhat of a boiling point for Autotune because it was saturated on the radio. T-Pain and a lot of other rappers and singers were using it excessively. It was on everything. And of course, Time Magazine and their plethora of opinions listed Autotune in their top 50 worst inventions ever.
And that was in 2010. So that was during that hype of everybody being anti-Autotune or like overusing Autotune.
And I would definitely not say that it's one of the worst inventions. Far from it, in fact, because again, it's a thing that we require now.
It's one of those things. It's a tool. It's like if a carpenter decided he was going to do every single thing he did only using a hammer. I'm like, well, there are other tools to do things, and you can do things other ways. He's like, but I want to turn this pipe, screw it in with a hammer. And I just love this hammer. Everybody else is using hammers. I saw my friend use a hammer. I'm going to use this hammer to do it. And like, it might not be the best tool for that, but everybody started using hammers. Like, oh, well, that's the thing to do now. You use hammers to turn pipes and hang things on walls and cut things open. We just use hammers.
The thing that vocal tuning has done that I think in some ways kind of negatively affects our profession and our jobs is it does allow people with less or even no singing ability at all to come out with an album and to essentially further saturate the market with more and more music.
Right.
And there's just so much noise out there right now. But in other ways, I think that might even be a better thing because now you have to be even better because there's a million people out there who can, I'm doing air quotes here, sing because they can tune their vocals. So that means your voice you can't just have good pitch. You have to have a unique voice. You have to have something about your voice that isn't pitch related that makes it good and stand out.
My 3 cents on this topic, since I'm going to talk a little bit more than 2 cents worth, is that I agree with you. I think that there is a lot of noise in the industry. Everybody and their uncle can put out music, but I think that's a good thing. I think that people who are born without a natural ability to sing well, but who love music, have a passion for music, can now create music and can correct their vocals in a way that can be pleasing to other people's ears, including themselves, even if it's only for them to listen to in their basement of their house, on repeat.
I can see that.
Now they have a way to fix their music, to fix you can't, some people cannot sing in tune. They just can't. You can't be taught. You just don't hear it. But they can fix it with tuning capabilities on a software program. You know what I mean? Good for them.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, that's definitely the more compassionate approach. Sometimes I get in and I'm like, really? Really? You just expect me to tune that, don't you?
I mean, yeah, that happens a lot. But I mean, I'm all for it, man. Make music. It's an art. Do it however you can. If this is a tool you need to do it, there it is. It's available. Please purchase it and don't pirate it.
To simply play devil's advocate here, just for the sake of playing devil's advocate, what if I couldn't paint and I just threw a bunch of random colors on a canvas and then used some tool that I could buy from Walmart that then took those colors and arranged them into a beautiful painting? Should I be able to make money as a talented painter?
Here's the thing. If someone's willing to pay you for that, then you've accomplished your goal.
There you go.
Or if you can hang it on the wall of your mom's house and be like, all right, she appreciated it. I'm going to learn how to talk. Can we put words in the air and then you can rearrange them and make them make sense? Can Autotune do that? No, I mean, can you put a picture on the wall and if you're happy with it, then you've accomplished what you went to do. I mean, I don't know. I think if the singer's that bad and it requires that much tuning, obviously you can still hear it a little bit in some of the software algorithms. People won't buy it unless they like it. And if they like it, then you made a product that fits your market.
I guess it's a little bit of mixing business and pleasure, mixing the morality of, are you lying to people by convincing them that you can sing?
100% yes.
You can't.
That's our whole job, Jake.
This is true.
I mean, we're making 3-piece bands and 4-piece bands sound like there's 20 people playing. It's
exactly what we did with our band.
10 stacks of guitars, 20 background vocals, loops and rhythms and tambourines. And who's on stage playing violin and tambourine while these rock bands are playing? Most of the time, nobody. We're fooling people. It's the whole nature of our industry.
This is true.
It's entertainment, man.
It's entertainment.
And that's the point of our podcast, is to show you that we all just lie to you all the time.
All the time.
Everything you know is fake. Just kidding.
If you have any questions about Autotune or really anything industry related, also any kind of suggestions or ideas for podcasts, we listen to what you have to say and we're interested in hearing those. And your idea very well could be a future episode of the Turned Up Podcast.
Oh, yeah.
You can reach out to us anywhere online. Of course, Instagram and Twitter at
Turned Up Podcast or Facebook.com/Turned
Up Podcast. You can also go to turneduppodcast.com. There's links to all of our social media as well as all of season 1 and season 2. Also on our turneduppodcast.com, you can join as a patron. If you listen to the Turned Up Podcast and you love it, and you really want to be able to give your feedback, input, help craft the show, and even get the notes from this episode and future episodes, You can go there and sign up to be a patron. You can give anywhere from, I think, $5 or $10. I think $5 a month might be the minimum.
Yeah, I think something like that.
Up to like $100 or $500 a month if you're super rich and just love us and hearing our beautiful faces.
Right. Yeah. If you like hearing our faces, whatever that means.
I have a face for podcasting.
We both do, Jake.
Then you can do that. We encourage you to do it. And speaking of which, a huge thank you and shout out to our newest patrons, Samantha Seeger.
Samantha Seeger!
That was a nice shout out.
Thank you. That's the best I could do from this point of the room.
Seesaws, Natalie B, J Walter 1, and Josiah 820. You guys are keeping us alive. Welcome to the family. Again, turneduppodcast.com. You can become a patron. We have a special Facebook group for you to join. Where
you can hear all the things that we didn't put in the podcast. Sometimes we post little clips there, as well as you can see some pictures of us doing things, and we can actually ask you questions about, like, hey, we're going to talk about this. Should we have any questions for our special guests? That kind of stuff.
You can chat with us. We have stickers, mugs, all kinds of really cool things, some sweet swag, and more importantly, just connect with our listeners and give us an opportunity to get to know you, and also you to get to know us.
I'm not lying when I say this. I think my favorite mug right now is the Turned Up podcast mug that we have. We gifted ourselves one each before we mailed some out to our patrons. But just making a little bit of tea or maybe a hot toddy or something in the evening, just drinking out of that mug. It's cool. I mean, the inside's colored, the outside's colored differently. It's one of my favorite. It's probably my favorite mug right now.
I wash mine out every single morning before I make my coffee. So check it out. We also have pictures of it on our Instagram, I know.
Yeah, oh yes, we do.
You can see it. And thank you so much to Real Sound Media for making this possible, for providing us with the tools and insight that we need to put out a fantastic podcast. Thank you, Robert Venable, for your research into this topic and your immense amount of knowledge. Of course, we all know you were around when music was first invented, as well as all of this technology. You saw it come about, and
it was hard to try to tune tree nuts and other lagoons because you had to
bang rocks and sticks together.
Can you tune a click? Oh, hey, one thing we didn't mention, this is a bonus tip in our podcast. You can actually find an app on your phone that can tune your voice. There are free ones, so you can look them up on iPhone and Android. Yeah, you can look on the App Store, whatever you have, the Google Store, whatever it is, and just search for Autotune. There's several of them that show up. Look at the ratings, see if it's worth it or not. But they have tracks, and you can sing along, and it'll automatically tune your voice to it. It's really cool. Yeah, it's fun.
Oh, that's super rad.
I was playing with one there earlier. It's kind of cool.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed the episode. We're going to be back next week. Super excited. Next Monday, Turned Up Podcast. It's going to be a huge, huge episode. We're also going to be launching something, an opportunity for all of you who are interested in songwriting, maybe?
Yeah, this is for everybody.
Absolutely everybody. Young, old, experienced, inexperienced. You will love this episode. I'm very excited. And then the week after that, we have
I think I'm even more excited for that one.
We're going to have
this
some
gets better.
huge guests on, and you're not going to want to miss it. Thank you so much. Make sure you click subscribe if you're on iTunes, Apple Podcasts. Of course, we're on Spotify, Stitcher,
all the things,
Castbox, all the things. Of course, the home of our podcast, PodBean. And we love you very much. And until next week,
this is Nashville, Tennessee, signing out.
Peace out, my friend. Kiss your mama. Intro and outro music is Tell Me by As We Ascend. Believe is an original song by Cher. This podcast was edited and mixed by Jake Jones out of Incendium Studio and produced by Real Sound Media. We'll see you next week.